you know, just ask me the question, I may not know the answer, and I'll find out for you. And a lot of times in the first, you know, year of my actual job, it was like, yeah, let me call you back on that. And then, you know, you just get used to it. And I ended up compiling a binder that everybody wanted, and so I just put it together, and now I just update it once a year, because there's new services, new agencies that will come on board. So yeah. Any other questions on sort of my role and placement? Everybody's enjoying placement? Someone? Sort of?
I am. I just came from there.
Yeah.
Really great.
And it's probably stressful, right? Doing school and
Yes.
life.
That's
and,
consensus on that, I think, yeah.
Yeah. And my role as well, and my passion is around helping the professionals who will eventually come to us or another agency, balancing that out. So now it's school and work and life, and how do you manage all of that? It'll be the same when you go into your workplace. How do you manage? It won't be school, it'll be life, it'll be your clients and the stuff that you take home from them, which is really important, and how you do that. If you can establish it now, if you haven't already, in your lives, how do you care for yourself? And you guys probably talk a lot about that self-care. And we talk about it a lot in the caregiver support group. We use the analogy, you know, in the airplane when the stewardess is standing up there and she says, when the oxygen comes down, what do? Anybody?
You gotta put the oxygen on yourself so that you can help others.
Exactly. So think about that. Keep that with you always. If you can't breathe, there's no way that you're going to be helping the people next to you. So if you arrive at work and you're tired and you're stressed from all sorts of stuff and you don't have an outlet for that, how are you going to be able to help that person who's arrived at your door? Stressed from life and whatever. So it's really important to figure out what that is going to look like before you get there. And school is sort of a great testing ground. You know, try out the yoga, do Zumba, I do belly dancing now. It's just, you know, and you gotta feel your way. What works for you? Yoga doesn't work for you, find something else. And I will let Bill talk now, since
Well, all of the services that she's talked about, I have used. Counseling, caregiver support, bereavement support, and more recently, after many years of writing notes and feelings down, she convinced me that I should put together a book. So she's been pushing me, cajoling me, and finally we have something together, and it's being edited, and we're shortly going out looking for sponsors. So I can vouch for all the services I've had from the Alzheimer's Society. They've been tremendous. Really what I'm going to share with you is my experience as a caregiver. I retired I graduated just a little earlier than Christine. It was actually 1951 at the Hill, and it was in pre-med. And because of the timing, I wasn't able to get into the school, and I eventually ended up in human resource management. Retired about 25 years ago, I guess. But in 2000, my wife started to have problems with memory. And she fainted one morning in the kitchen, got her to Trillium, and they couldn't find anything wrong, but they gave her a very mild heart pill, something like a half an aspirin, I think. And over the next 3 years, her memory diminished, and we did not have a diagnosis as yet. She lost her watch, her rings, her bracelet, misplaced her glasses. She stopped driving because she felt she had lost some peripheral vision and was bumping into the curbs. And while the doctor has the ability to cancel your license, the last person she wanted to see was the doctor. And during this 3-year period, we went into what's called an isolation time. And at the end of 3 years, she didn't want to see family, she didn't want to see friends, and least of all, she didn't want to see the doctor. She was a graduate nurse from the Toronto East General, and my son is a graduate, has his master's in psychological counseling, so here I am, a graduate in healthcare. He's a graduate in psychology, she's a graduate nurse, and I can't arrange to get a diagnosis. You've heard of the Canada Health Act, have you? Well, that's a little piece of legislation that says no one can be forced to undertake any kind of medication or treatment unless they agree to it. So here we are, about the 4th year into this problem, and we still don't have a diagnosis. Well, she developed a very severe throat infection, got her to the hospital for a treatment by a specialist, and now she's in the hospital, and suddenly, with her condition plus the medication, her personality totally changed. She became very aggressive up and down the hallways, insisted on going home. We had to hide her clothes. And my son and I had to develop a 12-hour shift in order to look after her, because the hospital said, you either have someone here to care for her, or else we'll place her in a lockup, or she'll be strapped to the bed. So we did that for about 5 days. During about the 4th day, I had 3 people come and see me, and this may reflect on what you might be doing later on as one issue. They interviewed me and told me what services were available outside and how I could get them. And most of all, they insisted on giving me material, which I was supposed to read later on. Well, I hadn't had sleep for 3 nights. I'm still in shock about the situation here. And now I have this material to take home with me, which I don't have the time or the consciousness to read. So anyway, the 5th day, the doctor said she's ready to go home. We cured her throat infection. So I said, fine. So we went home, and the first month at home was a nightmare. She was up at 3 and 4 o'clock every morning, dressed in her white slacks, her white blouse, looked very nice, white shoes. She was waiting for a call from the registry because she thought she was going to have to take on a case. She's still nursing. Over the period of time, the next 2 years, things became progressively worse. We got a diagnosis while she was in hospital with this condition, of course. At this stage, the doctor said, yes, with your authority and the family's agreement, then we will do a total physical and psychological assessment, which they did. The doctor came out of the room and said, she's in the 2nd or 3rd degree of Alzheimer's disease. So, over the next, I'd say 3 years, things became progressively worse. Problems with eating, with dressing, with walking, incontinence, and all the things that go along with Alzheimer's disease. Oh yeah, we can flip over a couple, I think, at least one. So this is essentially what I've gone halfway through with you. I'm into the personal care area, and we have to lay out clothes in the morning in order to dress without choices. we had problems eating. We had to get heavy utensils because she started having some shakes and food would fall off the instruments before she could get it into her mouth. Incontinence became a problem, and I'm a strong advocate of using all the resources out there to help you. We were alone together. My son and his wife live an hour away, and they're involved in jobs, and they have 4 children, 5 children to look after. So it was just my wife and I together. Now, I went out to CCAC initially, and they offered me 6 hours a week, split up in 2 parts. However, I wasn't able to get a support worker who was compatible with my wife. And I had some difficulty initially, and as a result, she said, no one is coming into this house to help us except the family. And that was it. She just took that position. So there was nothing I could do about that. It was a busy time. I remember one morning sitting at the breakfast table, and I was wondering, should I do the dishes, get her dressed, start planning for lunch, make up a list for someone, a neighbor who was coming to buy some groceries, make the beds, do the washing from last night, had wet sheets and blankets, and so on. And Barbara spoke up and said, isn't it wonderful that we have so much help coming in to help us? And the humor in that statement gave me energy for the whole day. Just one of those situations that she felt that we didn't need any help, and she wouldn't let any help in the house. Incontinence, probably the thing that forces you into a decision as to whether you're going to stay with home care or whether you're going to long-term care. A decision that's the most difficult for any caregiver to make. Well, we managed to get by. Now, by the end of this journey, I had a closet full of pads, every size, shape, texture that you can imagine. Because if you have to wash sheets and bedspreads and pajamas every morning for 3 or 4 days in a row, you start to realize, hey, I gotta find a way to manage this. And on one occasion, I remember I received from the tenant company a set of trousers that looked like they were the real thing that would solve this problem for me. So I opened them up. They were samples and showed them to her, and she said, no way am I going to get involved with that. I just don't want to wear those. So I decided later that I'd go into the bedroom, strip down, I put them on, I came out, said, you know, they feel so soft and cozy. They're really good. I think you'd actually enjoy them. So she said, well, if you like them so much, perhaps you'd like to wear them. That day was a Friday. We were going for lunch at the Red Lobster. And that day, we dined at the Red Lobster in matching pads. She had hers on and I had mine on. Well, I mentioned the tenant company only as a resource because there are so many out there and you have to take advantage of all of them. Bathing was a problem. Now, you know, we're all stuck in routines and tradition, and we didn't get a bath every day. And I worried about that for a while, and then I thought back